Hello. How are we? Okay, that looks pretty good. We got a good shot. Hi, it's Martin Comtois, MC Starman, is in the house. Um, Talking about the spring equinox and what the fuck is going on. Intense times. Um, when we speak of the crisis that is going on right now, and it's on so many levels, it's easy to focus on this little bug that's going around. But I think that as we've been discussing and as we're exploring the meanings of our times, it's important to realize that this is much more than just a little bug. Um, you know, named after a beer. It is, to me, of psychic nature. It's psychological. It seems to be a collective psychosis of major proportion. And I've been through a few of those crises in my times. One of the most one that comes to mind right away is 2001 and what we went through during those times. And then we can look at the early 80s. And then we can look at the 1960s, and in a sense, this is probably more powerful than any of those, and yet it's not rational, and that's why I say this is a psychic infection, not a physical infection, although yes, it's a reality and we cannot deny it. But the way it has taken our collective, it is, and the fear and the irrational behavior, we're acting like children, and that's very interesting to witness. And so as we go along on this process, I guess I should speak a little louder, huh? As we go along in this process, it's really important to be objective about what's going on and to realize that, yes, it is an important crisis and there's much to worry about, but it's also a great opportunity, an opportunity. The word crisis in Greek means opportunity for change. And I think that if anything, this collective crisis is exposing the fallacy of our society and the lack of value or the lack of insight, the lack of a strong psychic immune system. Yes, we are worried about our physical immune system and we need to invest in it very importantly, but we also need to invest in our psychic immune system. We need to have, and if any benefit comes from this time, it is that we can take that seriously and invest in our psychic immune system by having good spiritual practice and good connections with our friends and taking the time. If anything else that is exposed is that, as everything is crumbling, our economies, our sanity, and how we're going through different reactions of this, to realize that investing in our spiritual health, our psychic health, is so important so that we don't get caught into the madness, got into this fever, which is irrational, the way we're behaving and the way we're acting, very, very strange. And so taking the time to nurture ourselves both physically and psychically through good spiritual practice. So on the Astromanatala table, I have the chart of the coming equinox on March 19th. at around 4:49, no, 10:49, 10:50 in the evening. The sun will be entering into Aries in the beginning of spring. I'll be in conjunction with Chiron, the wounded healer. Isn't there a better archetype than to express um, the times that we're going through, with Chiron, the wounded healer in conjunction with the sun? And I think this is a really important symbolic reality of our times and the opportunity of our times is for us as healers to step forward and to offer a more objective, a more wise, a more mature perspective on this crisis. And that is the great opportunity that we have as healers, is to uh, uh, spread a different message, a message that it is okay, that we are okay, and that we will move through this like we've moved through all other um, um, crisis in our history, and that we will grow stronger from it. Although our government and our leaders want us to cower into the front of the pressure, we know better. And we can act as mature human beings that we are. So, Chiron conjunction with the sun at the new moon. And then what's really responsible and to the tension that we're having right now is the Capricorn conglomeration of planets at the time of the entrance of the sun into Aries. Jupiter and Mars are in exact opposition, 2 degrees away from Pluto. So in the very short time span, we'll have a conjunction of Mars Pluto, then a conjunction of Jupiter Pluto. Saturn is just moving into Aquarius a little bit after the equinox, and so then within 7-8 degrees of each other, we have Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. And that to me, and I've been talking about it for a while now, that to me is a very, very important time in our history. One of the probably the most powerful alignments that we have seen for many, many moons, and one probably that we will see for a very long time. Now, this conglomeration of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto will be active throughout this year. So we're not, this is not going to be a short passing crisis. We're going to be in this for a while. And then with Mars, our will, our the inner hero or the outer hero, our inner warrior, our warrior, in conjunction with Jupiter and then Pluto. It's like our hope and optimism, and then Pluto, hell, the rage of the great mother. And so we're confronted with collective powers that frustrate our will and our optimism and our faith, and at the same time it redirects our will and our faith in our faith in a way that prove to be very deeply meaningful if we again invest in our psychic health and realize that this is an opportunity, a serious opportunity for us to change our dependency on our society, and to realize that our society is ill. And what a better example of it in the reaction that we're having. I mean, in a sense, it's quite hilarious that we're exposing ourselves and the fallacy of our society through this, and how a little bug and our reaction, our irrational reaction to it, is taking down our markets. It's having an impact unprecedented. And we have to look at 2001, and the last time, in 2001, the sun, Saturn and Pluto were in opposite, and opposition, and the moon was in T-square the day of 9/11. And that was a major shift. After 9/11, we became we became a police state. We used to be able to cross the border, from Canada to the United States with the driver's license before it, and now we have to subject ourselves to increasing, uh, police, and almost military like. Um, mm, control, and my sense is that this crisis that we're going through is not going to bode well for our individual freedoms. Already they're limiting our movement, and to me this ushers a new era which doesn't bode well for our freedoms. And I think that, and I think that as this goes on, we're going to realize that the intentions of our leaders are not so enlightened, and that as we move along, there will be some pushback. I'm posting another video on YouTube as well, about well, it's the opening comment on our times. At one of the recent workshops that I did here in Duncan, and we'll post that up, and it's a little more detailed exploration of what's going on. So please do tune into that, and we're going to be putting more and more material on YouTube for you to follow, and eventually we'll do our workshop series on YouTube. Again, it's a question of realizing that there's opportunity here, an opportunity really for us that have spent our life developing our healing talents to step up really in a more conscious and aware way. This is a time of action to help people deal with the psychic infection and the fear mongering and the incredible tension that is residing in our collective. I think one of the things is that we should keep doing is we should keep supporting community and supporting events that enrich and support our psychic health and our physical health. And one of the things that our society wants us to do is to remain isolated and not communicating with each other, and to and a friend of mine, I can't remember who, but wrote a song about how our collective wants us to stay isolated. We're much easier to pick off that way. We're much easier to control when we go into our houses and when we are afraid. And so please don't be afraid to hold healing circles and intentions and community-based and spiritual-based event to nurture your psychic health, because in what I'm seeing, it is much more important to support our psychic health, and also equally important to support our physical health. What else is important in the chart? And you see the chart on the picture there, but we have the only planets that are above the horizon in the chart is Venus and Uranus. Venus has moved out of conjunction with Uranus, but it's still quite close, and Venus is in Taurus. And so Venus is our need for love, for appreciation, for relationship, for creativity, and Uranus is the great revolutionary, but it's also unstable ground in Taurus. And so the Venus-Uranus has our emotional needs to be very threatened by this shaking ground that we're living on. And so that's really symbolic of how we're all feeling. Other important alignments, both the moon and Mercury are moving towards a conjunction with Neptune. So, having a safe container is really important, and having a sense of psychic containment and psychic health. And so I've been advising for a long time right now to take time to nurture your soul, to nurture your creativity, to nurture your Venusian inner child through creativity, through spiritual practice, through engagement with what makes you joyful. And more important than ever, we need to do that and to show up for that part of ourselves, especially in the light of all of this intensity that's moving on. Uh, Equinox charts, solstice charts have been done for thousands of years, and they usually set the tone for, the next cycle of time. And so at least for the next 3 months, this spring season, this Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Mars, our will's gonna be frustrated by collective events, we're gonna be restricted, there's a certain dying of innocence that's taking place, and in a recharge and a rebirth that is, potentially really powerful, but at this time very challenging. So then that puts a premium on psychic and physical nurturing of, and also not to get caught up in the collective crisis, but to realize that this is just a passing season, and these cycles of nature occur. We visited them in 2000 and the 1980s and the 1960s and the 1940s. Anytime the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction comes about, these are major shift. And then this time it just happens to be aligned with Pluto, which makes these times so much more important. But do yourself a favor. Don't overreact to what is going on, and maintain good psychic health and a good confidence in your abilities to withstand this with your community, with your loved ones, and spread some joy and some love through your practice and through your and one of the great blessings of it all is that now everybody's going to be forced to slow down, to look at themselves and to look at the reality that we're facing, and to celebrate what we have, because we live in a fabulous time for celebrating the human experience in the light of this incredible change that we're going through. Because everything is in Capricorn, this is really important manifesting time. There are new foundations that are being created. There are new, realizations about how we can align ourselves to true empowerment. And so, don't get lost. Don't get that opportunity, get lost in getting caught up with the collective psychosis. It's not going to serve you well. I want to talk about a couple of things, and then I want to end with a story for you. Kairos and Chronos. Kairos and Chronos are names for Saturn in ancient time in Greece. Chronos means linear time, tick, tock, linear time. That's like Saturn's function as the timekeeper. Then there's Kairos. Kairos is magical time. It's an object. It's those moments of time that have so much power in them that they are times for transformation. So the alchemist looks for those times as important time to shift one's focus or to shift one's life into making gold, alchemical gold. And in this way, this is a time for us to step up and to see that there's an opportunity, a kairos here, to make magic by not listening to our misleaders and our psychotic institutions, but to be the change that we want to see in the world and to show up in a more integral way. So this is an important alchemical kairos, an opportunity for change. And please, together, let's rise up and Make some noise. I trust you hear what I'm saying. Um, okay. Then I'm going to tell you a little story to end. And this is a story that's been told in The Astrology of Fate by Liz Green. And it's The Merchant of Istafan. Istafan, I'm not so sure where it is, and I'm not so sure when the story came about, but it is a symbolic journey, which I'm sure you will relate, and the point will not be missed in your process. So the merchant of Istafan was a very wealthy man who merchant who you know, much like the wealth of the West. This wealthy merchant was celebrating the wedding of his daughter, a lovely daughter, and celebrated the wedding. So he called his main servant, his most trusted servant, and he says, "My servant, you take this big bag of gold here, and you take my horse, and you go to the market, and you get everything you need to celebrate the wedding of my daughter. I want it to be really big and really beautiful. So you go." So the servant took the bag of gold, took the horse, and went to market. He came to market, and it was a busy day at the market, and everybody was buying and selling, and he was going about his duties, and he saw death. Death was there, and death was very threatening with his sickle and his dark mask, and that's Saturn, right? And then Saturn, Pluto. So Pluto is there with his with Saturn is there with his sickle, the Grim Reaper, and he does this thing to the servant, and the servant sees death, and he is terrified. He gets on the horse, and he starts right out of town, galloping, and he gallops, and he goes, and he's so going so fast, and he gets to a village, and he think, oh no, this is not far enough. So he goes to the next village, and he gallops, and he goes really far, and he's fast, and he's getting there, and he's going away. And then he gets to the third village, and he thinks, well, I think that I'm far away now. It's getting night. I'm going to get a hotel room. And he uses the gold of the master, and he gets himself a hotel room, and he goes into his hotel room, and he lays down in bed. Whew, I've outrun death. Then all of a sudden, there's a knocking at the door. Oh, who could that be? He goes to the door, opens the door, and here stands Death himself, Death herself. And Death says to him, you know, we saw each other this morning, and I wanted to tell you that we had a meeting here today. And, you know, and in that way, we cannot outrun our destiny. We cannot, by any means, outrun our life and our life length and our destiny. We must realize and meet our fate with courage and dignity, not like children who are running around without benefit of acquired wisdom and acquired skills, and with the wisdom and with the maturity and the gifts that we've been given, we have what it takes to face this and to make alchemical gold out of this crisis. So that's my message for you today. Be well and shine your light. At no time in history was it more needed than now. We got this, and we're in it together. Thank you very much. It's been a great honor. Please tune in. Tell your friends about MC Starman on YouTube. And we got more stuff coming up for you. We'll talk to you soon. Bless you. Woohoo! Okay, so how do you end this? End stream.